Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight, joined by Solomon Wilcots, who is, of course, the senior analyst with Pro Football Focus. Solly, how you doing today, man?
Doing great, and great to be on with you guys today.
Yeah, we're all properly socially distanced, and that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing in this time. Now, you wrote a really cool article back in March about wide receivers and about basically building a team with some of the top prospects. I thought that was kind of cool, and I think a lot of teams tend to look at the Kansas City Chiefs. You even outlined the Kansas City Chiefs as like the team that everybody wants to emulate. Of course, winning the Super Bowl does that. So let's take it to the Broncos here. They definitely could be a team needing wide receiver. What would be the best way to round out their receiving core, at least right now?
Well, the Broncos are very fortunate because they have a prolific receiver, I believe, in Courtland Sutton, who ranked top 20 last year in terms of our overall PFF receiving grade. He ranked in the top 20 when it comes to catching passes in tight coverage. Even his contested catch rate, 56%, ranked in the top 20 among receivers league-wide. And so I think now you just have to look at, okay, what do they want to add? Do they want someone who's a vertical threat who could blow the coverage off the top of defensive secondaries? Now, you're probably not going to get Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb, but the next best thing would be someone like a Denzel Mims who can provide the vertical threat that you're looking for. If you want to use Courtland Sutton down inside the red zone or even as a third down receiver, you can go elsewhere and get receivers who can provide other roles. Say if you wanted the slot receiver, Justin Jefferson from LSU, prolific when it comes to performing inside the slot, also down inside the red zone. How about Laviska Shenault right there at CU? He would be a guy who really can serve in a role like a Deebo Samuel from the San Francisco 49ers. He's a do-it-all kind of player, very physical, and he could be highly productive in the Broncos offense. So just depends on what role you want from that specific receiver. You already have a guy in Courtland Sutton who can do so many things within the offense.
Yeah, Ben, you've talked about it quite a bit on Broncos Country Tonight about how you'd like to see somebody to be able to take the top off. But, Solly brings up some points there about getting a possession guy as well. I know Deshaun Hamilton was supposed to be one of those possession guys. Hasn't quite worked out. I don't think we're giving up on him yet. But what do you think about as far as adding maybe multiple wide receivers in this draft?
Getting two receivers in the top 150 is something I've been a proponent of for a while. I think that getting somebody who can take the top off, as Solly mentioned, and it's somebody who can also work the middle of the field and sit the soft spot and zone, similar to the way Wes Welker used to eat teams up, or Jabbar Gaffney, guys like that. You don't have to go out and get an elite guy, but somebody who just has a knack for that portion of the game. And I think those two things are what the Broncos need to finish out this offense. I think if you get somebody who could take the top off, you force defenses to roll coverage. Now Sutton and Fant are getting one-on-ones. Then you get that slot guy who could eat up the middle of the field. Well, now all of a sudden it's pick your poison. Drew Lock just got to find the guy and be a point guard out there. And I think that optimizes the Broncos offense.
Solly, we were having a debate, and this came out because of Chris Sims' top 5 wide receivers. He left Jerry Jeudy out of that group. And so we kind of like, okay, wow, that's interesting. And it got a bit of a debate on what are the traits that you're oftentimes looking for in wide receivers to better understand what they're going to be as pros. I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because you could get some receivers that come out of certain systems in college. And while they may have been productive in the college system, particularly when they run a lot of spread offense, and you see a guy on the sideline holding up a sign with an emoji on it, right, telling the offensive players what to do. Well, most of those players aren't adept to doing the thing that they're going to be asked to do at the pro level. And the number one thing that they're going to be asked to do is what we call sight adjust. That is, after the ball has been snapped, while they're running a route, they have to adjust those routes to whatever the coverage is going to give them, because that's what the quarterback is reading. And 100% of the time, the receiver has to be on the same page with the quarterback, reading the same coverage. So when the coverages begin to morph and begin to rotate in that post-snap area of the play, they have to be able to read it, break off that route, and be very accurate in terms of making that decision. You don't get a lot of teams doing that in college. There are some players like in Alabama system or an LSU system where they play in a pro-style system where they're asked to do those things. I think that's the number one thing that receivers are going to have to do that many of them didn't have to do when they were in college. You also can't get used to getting wide open. You see that with the Alabama receivers.
Right.
In the NFL, there's no such thing as being wide open. If it happens, it's an anomaly. You better get used to catching the ball in traffic with guys hanging on you. They allow defensive backs to be more liberal in terms of making contact prior to the arrival of the ball. So that's another thing that NFL receivers are going to be asked to do once these players come out of college into the National Football League.
All right, Ben, just really quick on that. At the Combine, what are some of the things that you oftentimes look for as traits as it relates to wide receivers? What are the best skills that you can ultimately gain from that?
Well, I know everybody likes to look at that 40 time, but how often are you running 40 yards in a straight line in the NFL? You know, it's about route running. It's about being able to drop those hips and make that break. So I'm looking at 10-yard splits. I'm looking at the ability to sky high point the football. What's your vertical looking like? You know, what's the explosiveness that you have? You know, those kinds of things. As far as the Underwear Olympics go, it's really tough to take a lot of those traits and apply them to receivers because of what they do. But you go back to the tape, you look, is a guy physical? Can he box out with the body? Does he create natural separation and the ability to for a quarterback to put the ball in on him? Because that's what you're going to have to do at the NFL level. As Sally said, a quarterback's got to throw you open at the NFL level. The DBs are all over you.
Last
hey
one,
guys, I want to go ahead. I want to add this too, because there's one receiver, and we didn't see him operate at the Combine because he did not work out. But there's one receiver that Ben just described, I think, that fits that description perfectly. You're not going to hear a lot of people talk about him. I expect him maybe to go in the second round. The Broncos looking for a real value pick, maybe second, third round. Tyler Johnson out of the University of Minnesota. Yes. This guy is phenomenally competitive, phenomenally productive. 25 touchdowns in his final 2 seasons at the University of Minnesota. This is a guy that a lot of scouts quietly, they don't want to talk about him publicly because they hope that he's going to be there a little bit later. Because when you put the tape on, he just blows you away with how competitive he is. And he can do all the things that Ben just mentioned. He can win at the top of his routes. He can operate from inside the slot. And he dominated against Auburn in the Outback Bowl. He caught a lot of people's eyes. And so this is a guy that translates well to the National Football League.